"Hello, sir. What can I do for you?" I asked. "You can stop with the sir crap. You probably never knew this, but I rubbed whiskey on your gums when you were a baby to get you to stop crying." I laughed. I didn't know. Did it work? Of course it worked. It was just fine for generations of teething babies. Nowadays, doing such a thing would get a fella thrown in jail. Somehow, I don't think you're standing by my truck just to tell me that. No, I'm not. He looked over at the store, maybe checking to see if Mary was on her way out. "You know, Maisie is our only grandchild." "I do." "Some might say her parents were never very parental, if you know what I mean." I knew that too, but since it was from eavesdropping on my mother, gossiping about it, I didn't say so. "She's no worse for wear because of it, since she had her grandma and me in her life. There are just times she isn't quite as sure of herself as you might expect her to be. I suffer from some of that myself." Al raised a brow. "At least where your granddaughter is concerned." He shook his head and laughed. "You don't need advice from me, then. The two of you will figure it out." I could swear I heard him say, "Two damn peas in a pod," when he walked away.
As if I had any prayer of sleeping tonight. Nope, that wouldn't be happening. It was as though I'd gone back in time to when I was a teenager, crazy about Owen Ranger Messick, and absolutely certain he had no idea I was alive. Did he really remember coming to my birthday party? God, I swear my panties almost melted off my body whenever I thought about kissing him that night, and how I wished I hadn't had to leave the next morning. I'd never been kissed like that before or since. There was just something about being taken back to that time of my life, when the world held endless possibilities, when falling in love at the lake was every teenage girl's dream, and nothing mattered beyond who you ended up sitting next to at the bonfire, especially if they gave you a ride home in their boat. I couldn't help but wonder what might have happened between us if I hadn't gone away to college. Would he really have asked me out? Would Ranger have taken my virginity instead of the asshole fraternity guy whose name I wished I could forget? Would I have fallen madly in love and followed him to Syracuse instead of pursuing my own dreams? God, I hoped not. I'd seen too many of my friends choose to get married instead of going to college, as if the two things were mutually exclusive. Then, 2 or 3 kids later, they'd realize they resented missing out on all the things most people experienced in their early 20s. Invariably, those who married right out of high school were divorced by the time they were 25. Of course, there were exceptions, but they were statistically rare. I doubted Ranger was the kind of guy who would have wanted that. Not that I knew much about him, but when he'd mentioned hearing I went to Dartmouth, he'd sounded impressed. More so after I added that I'd gotten my MBA from Tuck. Then his eyebrows rose, and he smiled. He'd squeezed my hand in reassurance when my grandfather said I came back to save the carousel business, then whispered he wanted to get together with me tomorrow night, alone. I couldn't wait.